People just are, are maybe a little bit more emotional right now that it's a bear market. They're a little more on edge because the pulse chain hasn't happened yet. So
Mm-hmm.
what? It hasn't happened yet. It's not ready. But for those of you who think that it's not even going to launch, he's just going to run off with the money. He's spending the money. This other stuff, like it's all fault. It's all narrative, like that. It's just totally made up. You can look at those addresses and still see the money sitting there.
Yeah.
He's not out spending it. We know they're developing it. Shit. I don't know what more to tell you. If you want to believe that fan fiction, go ahead. But at this point, Richard's reputation is on the line. And if Pulsechain doesn't launch, it would be catastrophic to what he has already created and what he's doing. There's a documentary coming out. Dude's building a museum. It doesn't make sense that he would go through all of this stuff and then not release a product that people have sacrificed for, obviously without expectation of getting anything. But it is what it is. There's expectation there, but people just have to be patient. It's going to happen. You just got to wait it out. It took over 2 years when Hex was being built, from the moment of inception or idea. In fact, he had another coin that was going to launch before that, a CFTC coin or something
Yeah,
like
I've
that.
heard of this. Yeah, yeah.
That didn't even happen. But from the inception of the idea of Hex, it was over 2 years. And Hex isn't overly a hard contract. I mean, there are some intricate ideas in it, but a yield earning token with some compound interest in effect that can't be duplicated isn't overly hard. So this is a much more delicate type of software. And yes, it is an Ethereum fork, but some of the parameters are changing. It just I just get irritated when I see all the FUD. I'm like, you would be a complete idiot if you think he's just going to run off with the money. It's not going to happen at this point.
So I wanted to ask you a couple specifics on the Pulse Chain stuff a bit later, but that's a good segue. Now we're going to continue to come back to some of this like Hex stuff we're seeing on Twitter, and just there's just a lot to get to tonight with what's going on in the Hex Richard Hart kind of ecosystem. But with Pulse, for example, maybe answer this with percentages. Like what percentage of you feels that there is really X amount of work that still needs done on Pulse Chain? Even though, and I know Richard gave an example of what they're working on the other day, versus like totally timing the market right now. Like, how much serious work do you think really is needing done on Pulse Chain right now versus I want this released at the bottom of the market? Because I'm just a guy on YouTube, but it just seems to me that I think timing the market right now is what's really controlling this, and I applaud that. I think that makes total sense if that's what it is. But what are your thoughts, and what do you kind of maybe percentage wise put like the probabilities of those two things on like what's really happening?
Well, as you know, I haven't talked to Richard, but it's going to really depend on where he feels the bottom may be. After his interview that he was on that last stream where he said, he was talking about the pivot, and then the pivot could be 6 to 8 months after that. I really hope that's not where he's thinking the bottom is going to fall. But I think that has something to do with it. I really do. I don't think at this point where if there's more downside coming, you don't want to launch right now. It doesn't make sense. You want to have that chart looking good. And Hex didn't launch at the bottom either. It made a good, what was it, 32 or 33 days of all downward pressure before we reached a bottom there. So, it was a solid month of downtime. Now, you're not going to call it right away. And you're going to see that even if you do launch at the bottom, there's going to be people that are so anxious to get their tokens that they are going to sell. So you're going to have a price floor no matter where you launch it at. But you don't want the price to dip on top of the overall markets falling on top of that as well. It
Right.
just creates a pretty drastic drop. So it would kind of look like another chart that we know currently going down for a while. But anyway, I digress. I think there is some of that to it. But why not fix it? Why not tweak it to the best you can? If you are timing the market, why not do work and try and change a couple parameters that you may have wanted to put in? Had we bottomed already, I think you would have seen it. At least
Mhm.
the testnet version 3. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. Yeah, yeah.
but he's clearly not seeing a bottom anytime soon, I don't think. Um, eh, who knows? Maybe he'll wait for that bottom call to launch the test net and then go from there, and we can start some sort of rally at that point. I think it will be a catalyst for us anyway. Those involved with Hex, those involved with Pulse Chain, there's a lot of things being built on it that are kind of just waiting, and they're honestly considering launching it on Ethereum just to get a product out there at this point. I
Right.
don't think that's smart either. Their price chart is going to show a similar result as well. So I don't know. I definitely think that that is the majority of it is we're trying to time it more than it's just not done. Um, there's a couple other things that we have to think about too. The version 3 contract for Uniswap that allows
Mhm.
the single-sided stake or single-sided liquidity providing expires at the end of April, I believe,
Mhm.
which means you can't use that. So it's not open source until then. So why not wait till then to include that into the Pulse X platform, right? Why
Yeah.
not? Why would you want to do that twice? I think having a overall chart of liquidity is so much better than saying, all right, well, let me go to the V1 chart, let me go to the V2 chart, let me go to the
Right.
V3 chart. There's a lot of charts there. Why not keep it all under one umbrella? And do it all at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problem on Pulse X. You're going to have a V1 and a
Yeah.
V2 liquidity for that. So it makes sense to wait for that. I think they want the documentary to come out. Now they're slated in sometime in the first quarter, I believe,
Mm.
for that date. There's just a lot of things that are kind of playing in balance here that we've got to let them shake out. And the bottom of the market is definitely one of them.
Let me play devil's advocate here on the waiting for the Uniswap thing, waiting for the documentary. Because it already obviously, I don't think Richard purposely was waiting for like the merge, for example. But then, of course, once it happens, you might as well do what you need to do with ETH in its current state. But the saying goes whenever whatever some married couples try to have a baby or something like that, where it's like, well, it's just not a good time, and it's like, well, it's never a good time to have a baby. It's like, at what point um does the waiting for all these things to align end? You know what I mean? And I'm, again, just playing devil's advocate. I definitely see the merit in both things that you're saying, but at what point is it like, we just got to get this thing out there? I think it makes sense. Like you're saying, it would be good to just have one version of a liquidity chart after the Uniswap thing. But yeah, at what point is it just like we need to launch Pulse Chain?
Yeah, well, and this is another good point too. Johnny says, when Richard originally said it was mid-May, he never said what year. Um,
Yeah,
and because he likes to be right, he could have said, "Well, I always said mid-May. You just didn't listen. I didn't tell you what year it was."
yeah,
That
yeah.
would be pretty funny if it happened that way, and that would make sense too with that version 3 of Uniswap. It would kind of all play right into that whole timing, and would be funny. Richard likes to joke a
Would be
lot,
funny to
and
everybody. Yeah, I agree with you that it's
well,
funny,
at
but a
this
lot of
point,
people are
what's
not
the
laughing.
difference? At this point,
Yeah,
what's another 4 months?
yeah, I agree. Yeah,
5
yeah,
months. So
yeah, from what I have heard, and I think things are pretty concrete when it comes to like a documentary like that or a film being released. And yeah, I've been, I don't even know, I just keep hearing it, I guess. So maybe it's hearsay, but yeah, I think it does sound like Q1 is when that is set to come out. So yeah, that'll be definitely interesting as well. But